Take a look at the testimonials on screen. This is going to be worth those extra few minutes compared to the other guides because we're going to cover everything in this console settings video. We're going to cover the best movement settings, the best aim settings, so you get the most aim assist. We're also going to cover the PlayStation and Xbox dashboard settings, as well as some monitor settings or TV settings that you need to make sure you have set, because otherwise you may not be able to see into the shadows, or you may be getting bad frame rate performance. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the console settings. So I'm here in game so I can explain some of these, but let's go ahead and start with the controller. So for controller, I, like most people, like to rock 6, 6, and then 0.8, which I'll show you here in a moment. I have all of the rest of this set to off. Controller vibration is off. Trigger effect is off. Dead zone inputs, make sure you change these. And we're actually going to change a couple of them, okay? The left stick min is set to 10 by default. We want to bring that down to 3, so that way it activates rotational aim assist a little bit sooner. Same thing with the right stick min. When it's set all the way up to 10, you have to move that stick a lot before your stick actually starts moving. This will allow you to get a little bit more refined aim. If you bring it down too low and you notice your stick starts drifting or aiming without you inputting anything, you can bump it up a little bit and that can fix that. The other thing you should consider changing is the left stick max, because in this game, tack sprint is so important, especially now that we can tack sprint in all directions. And what that does is it makes it to where your tack sprint will be active sooner, because I don't have to push all the way to the edge of my stick zone. I actually only have to push about 30% of the way there, or probably about 50% of the way there, and then it starts the tack sprint, as opposed to me having to completely bottom that stick out, which should make your movement feel a little bit snappier. Is it going to be as snappy as a WASD on a keyboard? No, but try it out. See what works for you. See what has the right amount of sensitivity. For me, I've been playing with it around 70, but I might start bringing it down even farther for some movement mechanics we'll talk about in a future movement video. For aiming, I have sensitivity multiplier. This is the 0.8 that we were talking about. Bring your ADS sensitivity multiplier down to 0.8. From there, we're going to go into aiming advanced settings. We're not going to change any of this except for the aim response curve. We're going to have set to dynamic. We're going to leave the scale set to 1.0 and make sure the ADS sensitivity transition timing is set to instant. From there, go down to target aim assist. We definitely want that on. Same with ADS aim assist. Motion sensor behavior, don't change anything here. And don't believe any of the crap that you see on Twitter. I see people saying that changing any of this stuff changes stuff. It doesn't. Stop following BS clickbait Twitters and TikToks. Okay. Follow Iceman Isaac. Okay, let's get on to the movement. Tack, sprint, assist. Okay. This is so important that you set this to 0. Otherwise, you will have a massive delay. Whenever you start sprinting, it'll be forward sprint, forward sprint, forward sprint. So if you feel like you're moving in cement, that is why. I don't know why they didn't default this to 0. They're making their default settings bad and causing people to hate their movement. Tactical sprint on, 0, on. Mantle assist, we want set to off and have all of them set to off. Crouch assist off, corner slice off. Slide, dive, behavior, okay? I would really encourage you to set this to hybrid. The reason being is with those other settings, it's going to be a lot slower for you to get those slides off. And as we know, movement is now more important than ever with Omni movement. Now we can slide in all directions. Now, you're probably wondering how I'm able to move and slide and dive in all directions a lot easier. Well, that is frankly thanks to the sponsor of today's video, and that's Scuf, okay? Now more than ever with Omni movement, you want a Scuf in your hand so you can use these paddles on the back of your controller. These paddles for me are bound to circle and X, so that way I can slide and dive without ever having to take my finger off the stick. I can move forward, I can jump, I can slide, and I never have to take my hands off the controller, and it's going to allow me to do things as well, like sliding and diving, or like diving and aiming. I never have to take my fingers off the stick, because if you have to bring your finger off the stick as you're trying to do Omni movement dives to do a fadeaway shot, you're going to get gunned. A Scuf is now more important than ever in order for you to get the most out of your movement, and you can use code Isaac for a discount either on an Xbox Scuf, like the one you see here, the Instinct, with paddles on the back, and also the digital triggers for the rapid fire mouse clicks that can also be flipped in for regular like racing games, or the one I have in my hand right here, which is the Reflex, which also has digital triggers for the rapid fire. They've been a long-term sponsor of the channel. They've enabled people to get the most out of Academy gameplay and guides. And now, especially with Omni movement, you need to get a Scuf in your hand so you can get the most out of the movement engine. Okay, moving on. Once again, use code Isaac, link down in the pinned comment and the description. Also, if I change any settings, you will see those settings in the pinned comment as well. I don't expect that I'm going to change any settings, but in case I do. I've been playing this game for over a dozen hours though, so I've got you pretty well set. Automatic airborne mantle, we want set to off. Sprint restore on. Slide maintain sprint set on. Parachute automatic behavior, I have set to off. Mantle cancels reload off, movement advanced behavior. We have all of this set to defaults except for we want single tap run. That makes it where if we do have to click for any reason, it will go into the tack sprint, not the regular sprint. We have plunging underwater set to free, and this grounded mantle one. Let me show you the example here why you might consider setting it to on. Okay, so with it on, the game will automatically kind of mantle for you in these small ledges. Now, it can be nice because sometimes you may feel like you're, running into a window and you're just bonking your head against it and you can't get through the window, and the grounded mantle will help you. But that also means as you're shooting, sometimes, it'll be really apparent here, sometimes that grounded mantle will cause right there that aim to bite off on something and cause you to go out of ADS. That being said, you may consider setting grounded mantle to off. That'll make it to where now that will never happen. You will never automatically grab onto those ledges, but you may find yourself, if your movement's not super crisp, hitting your head on a window. And so it's just something to be aware of, that if you do have grounded mantle, you may find yourself un-ADSing when you don't want to mid gunfight. Totally up to you. I've got some movement stuff in the future for ways to mitigate this, so stay tuned. I have some very advanced settings that we're not going to cover in today's video that may help you in the future. But I think the average player would enjoy the grounded mantle on and just get over the fact that they may automatically auto-mantle. Vehicle advanced settings, change this to driver control. It defaults to aim-based control, which is where you have to hold forward on your stick to drive instead of using the triggers, and then you can't free look around. It's awful. Set it to driver control. I haven't done anything with score streak vehicle control. I haven't used score streak vehicles. It might be better for one or the other, but you don't use these inside of Warzone. Vehicle camera recenter, I have set to off. Free look, I have set to, or camera initial position, I have set to free look, and lean out is set to melee. Moving on to combat. This is all set to defaults. Weapon out activation is set to ADS and melee. The dedicated melee weapon, you have set to hold melee. That way, if you hold R3, you hold your right joystick, it will cause you to pull out that dedicated melee weapon, which gives you unlimited tactical sprint. We are in a plunder lobby here, so we're going to be running into some new players. I'm actually thinking about doing something, side note, little sidebar. I'm thinking about doing a live stream where I have everyone in my live stream all queue into plunder at the exact same time, at the exact same POI, so we can just farm kills and try to get as much XP as possible. That way, if you guys wanted to grind out the new camos or you wanted to grind up your levels without playing BO6, let me know if that's something you'd be interested in. Comment down below. I think that could be a really good use of everyone's time if we all just queue snipe each other and land in the same spot. Okay. Combat, once again, that's hold melee. I haven't set to prioritize body shield, so that way if you hold, press and hold, you will initiate a body shield. Double tap, it will initiate a finishing move. For me, I want to put someone in a body shield in this game because I think it's toxic and it's also actually really useful sometimes. I would prefer to have it into the prioritize body shield. Apply all plates, definitely want to have that. Equipment behavior, I have set to hold. Manual fire behavior is set to press. Combat advanced settings. Weapon mount exit is set to instant. That's so that way if you're mounted on something, if you press move on your left stick, you'll instantly get off it. Interact, we want prioritize interact. In multiplayer, I like prioritize reload. You want prioritize interact set here for Warzone. Sprint cancels reload. Have that turned off. If your eyes glazed over for a second, have this turned off. In previous iterations, when you were using automatic tactical sprint, sprint cancels reload would not interrupt your sprint, but now it will, and you will have this awkward sprint reload. Have it turned off. Akimbo behavior, have it set however you want. Depleted ammo weapon switch, I have that set to off. Overlay advanced settings, I don't have anything changed inside of here. Let's get into the graphics settings. You need to change this in the main menu. If you did, I have 120 hertz set. Gamma and brightness, I have mine set to 55, but you can consider bringing it down to 50. The game is kind of hazier than it used to. They added kind of a weird filter. But 55 tends to bring out the shadows for me. Eco mode preset, have that turned to off to make sure you get the most frames. Turn off all the blurs and add Fidelity FX Cast, which adds some sharpness. The sharper the lines are, the more you can discern a target who's maybe running across some hidden textures. On-demand texture streaming, I have set to minimal. For view, we're going to change all of this manually. FOV, we have 120. ADS field of view is set to affected. Weapon field of view, wide. Vehicle field of view, wide. And then turn all of the movements to the least possible. Inverted flashbang, I have off. That's basically if you hit by a flashbang, your screen will turn black instead of white. Over to audio. I have my gameplay and my cinematic music turned all the way down to 0. Dialogue, I have set down to 30 because sometimes that in-game dialogue and announcer voice can be too loud and it'll cover up other footsteps. Effects volume, keep it 100. Enhanced headphone mode. For now, go ahead, try having it on. Okay, you do not need to go through this whole pay-to-win thing. Basically, what the immersive game pack is the enhanced headphone mode took the average ear shape, the average head shape, and created a more accurate spatial system. It's some voodoo wizardry. And basically, you can upload your own personalized profile where they scan the size of your ears, the shapes of your ears, the difference in size. It basically helps with like audio interpolation. Just use Universal, keep it on. You don't need any of the fancy stuff. From what I've heard, it's kind of sucks. But the enhanced headphone mode for me has been better than having it off. Audio mix I've set to headphones. I used to recommend Sucker Punch. It's really good. And technically, the footsteps are the loudest in Sucker Punch, but so is the rest of the bass. And it can be really overwhelming for the bass if you're not used to it. I have the rest of this set to off, but I did go in and I adjusted my frequency intensity. I'll have a quick clip play on screen showing these frequencies, but these 10K, 8K, 6K are so high. You do not need to have those. Those are like tinnitus, ear ringing dog whistles. You don't need to have those boosted. And by bringing them to -50 and -25, it's actually -2.5 decibels and -5 decibels. It kind of slows it down. Take a listen real quick. You don't want to listen to these frequencies while you're playing. Now, unfortunately, we can't go down into what's considered like the sub bass, which is like the low rumbles, which is what I want to get rid of because that's like the kill streaks and like the explosions. But I want to boost up, you know, the footsteps. So you can't get the most out of this like I originally thought you'd be able to, like a FPS hub tune or an Artist War tune or any of the audio optimizations. So that's just an unfortunate reality. I've reduced tinnitus sound on and hit mark preset set to default. Voice chat, I would suggest turning off right now. There's a bug in the game where you can hear people from like miles away and it's so obnoxious and you're wondering like, why can I hear everyone? And especially on small map, it's way too annoying. Everything else is set. I would suggest make sure your microphone level is not set to 100 because you're going to be blasting people's eardrums with your crappy mixed amp. Interface, we got a couple important ones here. Menu prompts, I have that all set to automatic. That's totally up to you. I personally like leaving off gameplay tips and tool tips. That's totally personal preference. Turn on your server latency and packet loss. Readability, subtitles are up to you, but I did go into color customization. I went down to color filter. I set 2. Color filter target, both, and I set the intensity to 100. That just kind of makes the world a little bit more vibrant and adds a little more pop of color because I think the world, even in Treyarch's vision, is still kind of dull. Moving over to gameplay HUD. I have the minimap set to square because it gives you more information. Rotation on, radar off, compass type horizontal. Vehicle HUD prompts, I have fading after 10 seconds. In-game text chat is set to on. Player names is full. Crosshair, click show more. And then for me, I've changed it to where my crosshair color, I've bumped the saturation, the brightness, and I've made it bright blue. It's kind of on brand, and you actually don't see that much blue in this terrain. Like, you could set it to green, you could set it to yellow. I like the bright blue. It's on brand, and there's a lot of white in this map. Even if you look up into the sky, like it's like a cyan. It's not like a sky blue. And so for me, it pops out no matter where I'm aiming. I feel like that center dot is a lot of contrast to help me with my centering. And it's on brand. Everything else here I have set to defaults, but I would suggest if you want, you can make that crosshair dot larger if you want, and that'll also help out with your centering as well and seeing where it's at. If you want, you can also bring down the score feed as well. That's where it shows like the +10 enemy stun, +10 player down, +100. And sometimes that clutters up right next to your crosshair and people don't like that. You can bring that down and it'll help kind of make some of that a little bit more transparent. Same things with things like the medals and notifications up at the top of your screen. If you don't want to see any of that, you can take that all the way to 0 and you don't have to see any of those weapon widgets. So that wraps up the in-game settings, but do not skip this next part. A lot of people, check out the comments down below, thought, I don't need this. And they ended up messing up something severely with both their PlayStation console settings, their Xbox console settings, or even their monitor or TV settings. This may save you frames. It may save you performance. It may give you more information. Do not skip these settings. They're very helpful to a lot of people. They are timestamped down below, but make sure, if you haven't already, drop a like on this video, subscribe, because I have some advanced guides coming as well, and check out Scuf down in the pinned comment and the description. It is an absolute game changer. They have a 1-year warranty on their next gen controllers, check out their PlayStation, check out their Xbox controllers, and use those paddles to get the most out of Omni movement. Without further ado, let's check out the PlayStation specific settings. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go up into the settings menu, we're gonna scroll all the way down to screen and video, and then we're gonna double check to make sure our current video output is matching what we expect to see. Now, I'm not loaded into Black Ops 6 right now, but what I would typically expect to see is 3840 by 2160, variable refresh rate, and then variable refresh rate all the way up to 120 Hertz. I don't have the game loaded up right now, so it's not kicking in that 120 Hertz mode. Once you launch the game and enable 120 Hertz, it will show that. Okay, if it's not showing that, we need to double check we've matched the settings that we need. Okay, so we're gonna go to resolution and you're gonna set as you see fit. I'm using a 4K monitor, so I'll have 2160p. If you want 1440p or 2160p, you might have to do test 1440p output, which will cause the screen to flash a few times. You'll have to confirm that you can see everything correctly, and then you will put that on. Variable refresh rate, we're gonna have on because it's gonna kind of account for the fact that not always can a console reach the full 120 Hertz. So if your monitor or TV supports it, it will allow that refresh rate to go down to 110 or 100, which will help some of that more jittery, jarring, especially screen tearing that can happen. Now, 120 Hertz, make sure you have that enabled. Now, if you're not sure whether or not you have this enabled, go look up the specific model number of your TV or your monitor and look up a dedicated guide for that monitor specific to gaming. Okay, it will tell you what the best settings should be. It'll more than likely have low latency or gaming modes that will reduce input delay. Because oftentimes with these default modes, whether it's the cinema modes or the normal mode, it will use AI upscaling to make the content on your screen appear sharper or more vibrant. And we don't want that. We want that system giving us that information as fast as possible with no extra upscaling or whatever it may be. So go through, find your specific monitor, find a guide for gaming, and then, like we mentioned earlier in the interface settings, you can change things like the black levels, the shadow levels, the saturation to get your fit. But at the very least, make sure if your TV or monitor supports it, we get the 120 Hertz output we paid for. On top of that, if you are not seeing the 120 Hertz output supported, we know the PlayStation supports it, and we know your monitor or TV supports it, make sure you are using the correct cable. If you have a cheap HDMI plugged into your monitor or your TV, it will not support 120 Hertz. You need to be using an HDMI 2.1. The same thing goes for the actual TV or monitor itself. Sometimes only one port on the TV supports HDMI 2.1. It might have a 120 Hertz port, and then the rest of them are 60 Hertz ports. So make sure you follow the guide, you put the correct HDMI 2.1 into the correct port, and then we'll have all of the settings that we should see here. And let's move on from there. Okay, 120 Hertz, auto low latency mode, video transfer rate. More than likely, you should be fine setting this to automatic, but you will see you might have to select -2 or -1, which would limit our ability to set things like 4K 120 Hertz because the HDMI does not have the throughput. So once again, that all goes back to make sure we're using the right cable. You should be able to, if you have everything set up hardware-wise with your monitor and your correct ports, to put it on automatic. HDR I have turned off, that's totally personal preference, and then everything else I have set to automatic. Now, if your screen is flickering or flashing black and turning off, you might need to double check some of your hardware settings, but once everything is set correctly, you can go all the way up to the top and you should verify that you have everything set as you see fit. From there, we're gonna back out and go all the way down to save data in game app settings. We're gonna go to game presets and we're gonna make sure the game is set to performance mode because we want the highest frame rate and the lowest input delay. If you're going to play some sort of cinematic game, go ahead and turn this down to resolution mode. Sometimes you can trust the game default to do the right thing, but me personally, I'm going to put it in performance mode so I know for a fact I'm getting the highest frame rate and the lowest input delay for my FPS gaming. From there, you can go on to accessories, you can go into general, and if you want, and it might just be a placebo thing, but some people have said the controller feels more responsive if you turn off Bluetooth, basically forcing it to where the controller has to communicate via the wired method. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's something to try out if you want to and you're already set up to use a USB cable. Just an option to totally try it out. But ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up my PlayStation settings for the video. We'll go on to Xbox after this, but if you're heading out right now, do me a favor, drop a like on this video because I spent a lot of time. I could be grinding out my weapon camos right now. I think this helps out the community so much. So many of these settings, as I've seen from reviews in the past, have been totally messed up, ruining people's gameplay experience. And I really hope this helps out, okay? Make sure to drop a like if it did, subscribe for even more, and turn those notifications on so you can find out about all the best settings, guns, and guides for all things Black Ops 6 and beyond. But without further ado, let's get into the Xbox settings. So for that, you're gonna go up to the top of your dashboard, you're gonna go to settings, and then we're gonna go into TV and display options. Now, before we do this, a very important disclaimer. One, make sure your TV is set on game mode. Okay, we mentioned this over on the PlayStation setting. Make sure it's set to game mode because that will allow auto low latency mode to kick in, which means it won't be doing any upscaling. It won't be doing anything to clean up the picture. It's just going to give you that raw picture as fast as it possibly can for the lowest possible input latency. From there, we mentioned in the past, we can do things like up our saturation, or we can up our brightness or our black levels to help bring up those shadows. But most importantly, make sure you're using an HDMI 2.1 cable. If you're using a cable that's maybe you brought out of a closet or you bought online, so it's a longer cable to reach your monitor or TV, it might not be HDMI 2.1. And if it's not, that means you're not going to be able to get the 120 hertz on 4K or the 144 hertz over on 1440p. Make sure you're using an HDMI 2.1. Okay, so you're going to go into your display options, go into settings, go into display options, and the way you can really tell is go into your 4K TV details. You can look and it'll tell you what is supported. So it says my TV supports 4K Ultra HD at 120 hertz. Now, if yours doesn't display that, but you know your TV or monitor supports that resolution, that's simply telling you that that HDMI cable that you're using is not supportive, not necessarily that your TV isn't supporting it. So if it's not showing up how it should, make sure either one, you're using an HDMI 2.1 cable, and if you are using an HDMI 2.1 cable, make sure that cable is plugged into the correct port on your TV, because oftentimes only one port on the TV will support 4K 120, but the rest only support 4K 60. So double check all that, make sure it applies here correctly, and then we can go and start changing some settings. So then from there, I'm gonna set to 4K Ultra HD because my monitor is 4K. And then I'm going to change my refresh rate up to 120 hertz. From there, we're going to go down into device control. And if you want, you can turn on HDMI CEC, which basically allows consumer electronics control where the TV can control the Xbox, they can turn each other on, etc. I don't have that turned on for my use case. But what is important to change is go over to video modes. Make sure you have all of these ticked off that you possibly can tick off, except for a couple. Okay, so I have 50 hertz turned on. I also, more importantly, have auto low latency mode turned on, which will basically have the Xbox tell the TV that, yo, we're going into game mode whenever I turn on my Xbox, which you want. I have variable refresh rate turned on, which basically means that my refresh rate, as long as your TV or monitor is capable of this, if it can't reach 120 hertz in the moment, it'll bring it down to 110 hertz, 110, 100 hertz. That way it prevents some pretty nasty screen tearing. From there, I have allow 4K turned on, and I do not game with HDR on just for consumer reasons, content reasons. So if you want HDR, that's totally up to you, but most people suggest leaving that off for competitive FPS gaming. And that wraps up the most advanced console settings video for the new Warzone integration. Make sure you guys drop a like if you learned something new. Make sure you subscribe here for the even more advanced guides that I was talking about in the future. Check out the sponsor of today's video, Scuf, and use code Isaac for a discount. And on top of that, join me over on Twitch, where we'll probably do those plunder guides where we all drop in together and farm XP and farm weapon camos. I think that should be a great way for the Academy to get together, especially after they're doing some weird stuff with the double XP token. So, hope you guys enjoyed this video. I will see you all on the next one. Peace.